Boyfriend's ex got me banned from his friend's wedding, then had to watch us dance the night away. Joey and I have been together for about a year and a half. Though we had a 2-month break last summer, we eventually found our way back to each other. During that brief split, Joey reconnected with his ex-girlfriend Brittany, who he had dated for 4 years before we started seeing each other. They only met up once, and from what Joey told me, it was purely platonic. However, it turns out Brittany still had feelings for him and was hoping that their meeting would rekindle something between them. When Joey and I got back together, Brittany was furious. She sent him a series of angry messages, which quickly turned nasty, and continued harassing him long after we had reconciled. Joey didn't respond to any of her texts, hoping she would eventually stop, but she seemed determined to keep reaching out. Unfortunately, they have a lot of mutual friends, which has made avoiding her more difficult than we'd like. A few of those mutual friends, a couple Joey and Brittany have both known for years, recently got engaged and asked them both to be part of the wedding party, Joey as a groomsman and Brittany as a bridesmaid. It was awkward, but Joey and I wanted to be supportive. However, in February, Brittany took things a step further by asking the bride if Joey could attend the wedding without a +1, claiming it would be too hard for her to see him with someone else. When Joey heard about this, he immediately contacted the bride and groom, who reassured him that Brittany's request wouldn't impact his +1 invite, and that the choice of his guest was ultimately up to him. Despite this, Brittany kept reaching out, even going as far as to contact me on Instagram. She messaged me specifically about the wedding, bringing it up in a way that felt intentionally provocative, as if she were trying to get under my skin. When I replied, she admitted outright that she was contacting me to get a reaction, saying that it was for her own self-gain. Her constant harassment was unsettling, and I couldn't help but feel uneasy about the upcoming wedding. Then, in April, Joey and I attended the couple's engagement party, and of course, Brittany was there. We did our best to ignore her, and thankfully we managed to have a fantastic time despite her presence. But later that night, at 3 a.m., Brittany texted Joey again, sending him a string of degrading messages about both of us. She even claimed that he wouldn't be getting a +1 at the wedding and warned him not to make a fuss about it like he did last time. I found this particularly strange because the invitations hadn't gone out yet. Why was she the one telling him this rather than the bride or groom? Something didn't sit right. Finally, Joey responded to her for the first time since the harassment started, telling her firmly to stop contacting both of us. He hoped that would put an end to the issue, but I had a sinking feeling it wasn't over yet. When the wedding invitations were finally sent out, Joey's invitation indeed did not include a +1. He was disappointed, especially after the reassurance he'd received from the bride and groom months earlier. He reached out to the groom to ask why, and the response he got was that they had to prioritize couples who'd been together longer, those who lived together, or those who know both the bride and groom due to budget limitations. I know a wedding should be about what the bride and groom want, and if they decided not to give Joey a +1, it's ultimately their call. But I can't shake the feeling that Brittany had something to do with it, especially since she is much closer to the bride than Joey is to the groom. The timing of her text and her earlier request to the bride make it hard for me to believe she didn't influence this decision in some way. So now I'm faced with a dilemma. Am I wrong for asking Joey not to go to the wedding without me? This would mean he'd have to drop out of the wedding party, which I know is a big deal. I wouldn't feel uncomfortable about him going alone if Brittany hadn't harassed us for months. If she had respected us and let us enjoy the wedding in peace, I'd be fine with him going. But that hasn't been the case. Brittany has repeatedly disrespected me, Joey, and our relationship. She seems to have no regard for boundaries, and I'm worried about what she might try to pull at the wedding if he goes alone. I'm just exhausted by this whole situation and want it to end. Update 1. My boyfriend spoke with the groom, who explained that due to budget constraints, they limited +1s to couples who either live together or are traveling from out of town. The bride's family is footing the bill, so it seems they had some say in who was invited. The groom hadn't been aware of the full extent of Brittany's behavior towards me and my boyfriend. The groom was also surprised to learn that Brittany had told my boyfriend back in April that he wouldn't get a +1, especially since they hadn't finalized the guest list at that point. My boyfriend acknowledged that it felt disrespectful for the bride and groom to exclude his +1, especially given his role as part of the wedding party. Even without Brittany's presence, it seems like priority should have been given to members of the wedding party over regular guests. That said, he doesn't want to completely damage his friendship with the groom, which I agree with. We ultimately decided he would attend the ceremony, but skip the reception. The groom even mentioned that I'm welcome to attend the rehearsal dinner and welcome party, which feels like a fair compromise. My boyfriend plans to ignore Brittany entirely at the events and shut down any attempts she makes to create drama. He's thoroughly disgusted with her behavior and sees her attempts to cause tension between us as a testament to her own issues. Ironically, instead of driving a wedge between us, her antics have only brought us closer together. Additional details: to clarify, my boyfriend was never directly told he would receive a +1. Back in February, the bride and groom said they hadn't finalized the guest list. When people asked what happened between Joey and Brittany, I want to make it clear that nothing romantic occurred between them during our break. They just went for drinks and later met up with the bride and groom since they're all friends. According to my boyfriend, it was a bit awkward, and he didn't realize Brittany still had feelings until after he and I got back together. Update 2. This is the final update about the wedding, which took place this past weekend. Get ready. It's a long one. Backstory: my boyfriend was asked to be a groomsman at a wedding where his ex-girlfriend Brittany was also a bridesmaid. For months, Brittany harassed him, reaching out constantly, even though he ignored her messages. She also messaged me on Instagram, openly admitting she didn't want to be around us at the wedding because it would be distracting. It was clear she was hoping to break us up and rekindle things with him. Months ago, the groom had told my boyfriend that I could attend the rehearsal dinner, the welcome party, and part of the reception. However, due to budget constraints, I wasn't invited to the ceremony or the dinner portion of the reception, but I'd be welcome to join after the formal events. A week before the wedding, the groom invited my boyfriend to a casual brunch on the Sunday after the wedding, but I wasn't invited. My boyfriend reassured me he wouldn't go without me. The rehearsal dinner drama. At the rehearsal, my boyfriend decided to confirm with the groom about my attendance at the rehearsal dinner. Shockingly, he was informed only 30 minutes before the dinner that I'd been uninvited. The groom explained that I didn't have a seat at the dinner, but welcomed me to join the welcome party afterward. My boyfriend, feeling disrespected, skipped the rehearsal dinner, and we went to a local bar to kill time until the welcome party. At the welcome party, the groom approached me, apologized for the politics, and expressed how glad he was that I could be there. He mentioned looking forward to seeing me at the reception. A few people asked about our absence from the rehearsal dinner, but I brushed it off and changed the subject. Later that night, we all headed to a nearby bar. While chatting with a wedding guest, the bride came over and joined the conversation, but she completely ignored me, only addressing the other girl. It reminded me of that interview Christy FLA did with Blake Lively. Feeling uncomfortable, I eventually walked away, learning the truth. The next morning, I met up for brunch with the same girl. She told me that as soon as I left, the bride started talking about me, revealing that I'd originally been invited, but that Brittany claimed she couldn't handle it if I attended. The bride said she uninvited me to appease Brittany, even admitting she was being petty, but didn't care. According to the girl, it seemed like the bride was trying to influence her to side with Brittany and distance herself from me. I barely knew this girl, so the fact that the bride was focusing on creating drama the night before her wedding was baffling. Like, shouldn't she be more focused on getting married? The reception. I was finally allowed to attend around 8 p.m. once the formalities were over. Not going to lie, dancing with my boyfriend right in front of his ex felt incredibly satisfying. We weren't trying to be petty, but it felt like wherever Brittany went, we were always nearby. She couldn't avoid us no matter what. During one dance, the bride and groom were in the center, and I happened to be directly across from Brittany. She turned her back so she wouldn't have to look at me, even though everyone else was facing forward. The only people who interacted with us were the other groomsmen and their dates. We ended up sharing the full story with a few of them, since they were clueless about all the drama. In a way, the night felt like sweet revenge. Throughout the evening, the groom came up to me several times, saying he was happy I was there. Whether he meant it or was just putting on a front, I honestly didn't care by that point. The only reason my boyfriend hadn't dropped out of the wedding was that we were repeatedly told I wasn't invited due to budget constraints, and that it had nothing to do with Brittany. Had he known the truth from the start, he would have withdrawn from the wedding altogether. When I finally learned the truth, it was too late. My boyfriend was already at the venue for pre-wedding photos, and the ceremony was about to start in an hour. Once the couple returns from their honeymoon, we plan to sit down with the groom and have an honest conversation. My boyfriend has made it clear that he'll be reevaluating his friendship with him.
Story 2. GF insisted I borrow her boss's clothes at his party, claimed they were just friends, until I watched her tuck him into bed while he was in his underwear. Here's the situation. I'm a PhD student, and I've been dating my girlfriend, who works as an executive assistant, for about 5 months. So far, things have been good. Our schedules are packed. She's constantly on call for her boss, while I'm knee-deep in my research, so we keep things low-key. Our dates usually involve takeout and a movie at her place, which we both enjoy. Her job requires her to accompany her boss to various events, dinners, fundraisers, and social gatherings, whenever he decides he'd rather have her there than a notepad. I haven't joined her for these events much, but I recently decided to tag along just to spend more time with her. Last weekend, she invited me to one of her boss's dinners at his house, a sort of casual business mixer. I showed up a bit late, admittedly, wearing navy slacks and a button-up shirt, which I thought was fine for business casual. But I quickly realized I was underdressed compared to everyone else, and my girlfriend looked a little annoyed. When I met her boss, Brady, he gave off a smug vibe, though he was polite enough. Almost immediately, my girlfriend asked him, "Do you mind if Cohen borrows a tie and jacket?" I didn't relay the dress code. Brady looked amused and responded, "That's unlike you, but sure. The jacket will be a bit big in the shoulders, but go ahead." She then led me upstairs, went right into his closet, and handed me a tie and jacket. I put them on, feeling a bit out of place in another man's clothes, but deciding to roll with it. The dinner itself was awkward. I felt invisible, with most people there ignoring me. My girlfriend was too busy backing up everything her boss said or mingling with coworkers to notice. Later, she apologized, admitting she can get carried away with work stuff. I brushed it off, though I decided not to go to another one of these dinners anytime soon. Fast forward to last night. I was at her place working on an assignment on her computer, since mine was being repaired. I went to send the document to myself and noticed her email was open. I spotted an email with the subject line, "Your boyfriend," and out of curiosity, I clicked on it. What I read stopped me in my tracks. Email exchange. Boss, your boyfriend has my favorite tie. Procure it promptly. You would choose that one out of 100 others. Wench. GF. It's already back in your closet. I can't help it. He looks nice in red. So, what did you think of him anyway? Approve? Boss. He looked like a little kid playing dress-up in my clothes, but in all seriousness, he's still a kid. He's still in school in an immature place. He's not husband material. You want kids in a house in a couple of years. Date someone who can give you that. Date a man. GF. Thanks for being honest. I value your opinion. Husbands aren't exactly growing on trees, though. That was the last email in the chain. Sitting there, I felt a mix of shock, anger, and hurt. Here was my girlfriend's boss, someone she often describes as just a friend, calling me a kid and deeming me unworthy of her. And worse, she seemed to agree with him, or at the very least, validated his judgment by thanking him for his honest opinion. It felt like an incredible lack of respect for me, not just from her boss, but from her too. This exchange suggested she placed his opinion above any consideration for how I might feel if I knew. I left shortly afterward, not saying anything to her about what I'd seen. Part of me feels terrible for reading her email. I know it's a boundary I crossed, but at the same time, I'm torn by the way she sought her boss's approval of me and seemingly accepted his low opinion without defending me. His comments felt degrading, and her response felt like she was condoning it. Now, I'm unsure how to approach this without escalating things. Should I confront her about the email or let it go? And in the back of my mind, I'm questioning whether I should be with someone who seems to value her boss's judgment of me more than her own. Update 1, I decided to take the advice I received and talk to her about what happened. I explained how I accidentally came across the emails, expecting she'd be upset about me reading her work messages, and she was, but she seemed to understand why I was unhappy with what I saw. She explained that her boss, Brady, isn't just her boss. He's a close friend too. They've worked together for 3 years and have been through a lot during that time. In those 3 years, they each lost a parent. When her estranged father passed away, none of her siblings were willing to attend the funeral with her. Brady volunteered to go with her and helped her through the entire ordeal, which meant a lot to her. They've essentially climbed the corporate ladder together, and there's a deep sense of loyalty between them. She tried to explain that asking his opinion about me was private, just like if I'd asked a friend what they thought of her, and she wouldn't hold it against me. I told her that while I understood that, I was still uncomfortable with their closeness and the way she seemed to place so much weight on his judgment. I also mentioned how frustrating it was that she hadn't clarified what business casual meant for the event, given the formality. She said my plaid button-up, not lumberjack plaid but a nice one, was a bit too casual for the event. She also admitted she was annoyed I'd been late because Brady has a thing about punctuality. According to him, on time is late. We didn't touch on the bigger issues like the whole husband material thing, since it's still early in our relationship, and we carried on with a relatively calm week. Then, around 2 a.m. last night, Brady called her, saying he was sick and needed her to check on him. She got up to leave, and I told her I was uncomfortable with the situation. She invited me to come along, but told me to keep my distance since she didn't plan on staying long and would use my presence as an excuse to leave quickly. When we got there, Brady was in the front room, so avoiding him wasn't possible. He was sick, and only in his underwear, which made me feel even more uncomfortable. My girlfriend went straight into caretaker mode, rubbing his hair, comforting him, and telling him they could reschedule most of his meetings or make one a phone call. She offered to work from his place the next day, bringing everything he'd need to his place in the morning. As I stood awkwardly by the door, Brady noticed me and almost looked smug about my presence. I could swear he did. He then asked if they could have wonton soup and fortune cookies for lunch, like usual, and she immediately agreed. She eventually took him to his room where she apparently gave him some medicine and, from what I could tell, tucked him in before we left. On the drive home, I couldn't hold it in anymore. I told her I was uncomfortable with their closeness and that if she wanted to keep dating me, there needed to be some boundaries. She accused me of being jealous and insecure, insisting Brady had never made a pass at her and never would. The argument escalated quickly and things got ugly. I made a comment about her practically being paid to suck his dick, and she fired back, saying the only difference between me and a college freshman is that I can buy beer. At that point, it was over. We were parked in Brady's driveway, and she got out, saying she'd just stay there. As I drove away, I couldn't shake the feeling that if he wasn't too sick to try, she'd be in bed with him. Update 2. In the midst of drowning my sorrows in Newcastles and biographies, I got a text from my ex-girlfriend. Part of me hoped she was reaching out to beg for forgiveness, maybe even asking me to take her back. I missed her, sure, but I also wanted to turn her down, call it pride or sheer foolishness. But as it turned out, that wasn't why she reached out. Her message read, "I wanted to let you know I'm sorry for what I said. Once you compared my career to that of a prostitute, I lost my temper and said a lot of things I regret. I hate to end things on a bad note since we were both hurt and lashed out. Also, I wanted to let you know you were right about Brady, just because I would want to know if I were in your shoes and you deserve to know you weren't crazy. I didn't think he felt the same way, so I tried to move on and love someone else. I didn't do a good job because he was constantly there. But as it turns out, he felt the same way the whole time. He just didn't think he could make a move. Brady thought, as my boss, it would be inappropriate to confess his feelings. So, 2 years of us being foolish and stubborn, but we are finally together. We're sorting things out with HR now, and they're supportive. I'm sorry for putting you in the middle of our personal drama. I wish you the best." And just like that, I'm left feeling like a fool. She never truly loved me. I was just a placeholder, while she tiptoed around her feelings for Brady. 5 months, wasted. Guess she gets her fairy tale ending, and I get a one-way ticket to monkhood. G2, G, fine, got edit. I don't really see this as an update, more just a final reflection. I don't begrudge her happiness or wish anything bad on her. Sure, I'm a bit bummed it ended like this because, despite everything, she was a fun girlfriend. We had some good times together, and we connected well. She even readied me up for intelligent conversations, so there was always plenty to talk about. She's honestly really smart. She does a lot of her boss's work and holds her own in any conversation. If not for her complicated family situation, she probably would have gone on to be an executive herself, not just an assistant. I'm not drowning my sorrows or falling apart. I'm just kicking back with a few cold ones and playing some video games because, as an introvert, that's my way of cheering up. At the end of the day, I'm not the hero here, and she's not the villain. We never said we loved each other. I thought it might head that way eventually, unless I end up teaching somewhere like Nebraska or something. But I said something shitty in our last argument, and that's where everything unraveled. Now that it's done, I can see that I threw the first punch in that conversation. I'm a little disappointed and a bit bitter, but I don't hate her or want her to lose her job or anything extreme. I just want everyone to be happy, and maybe I'll even get lucky this weekend. We won't be friends, and that's fine. I just don't have the time or energy to hate her. Thanks for all the advice. Commentary time. These two stories showcase how complicated, unpredictable, and sometimes bittersweet relationships can become when third-party dynamics and misunderstandings enter the picture. Story 1, The Wedding Drama. This story about OP and her boyfriend Joey's wedding ordeal highlights how jealousy, lingering past feelings, and complicated friend dynamics can impact a new relationship. Joey's ex, Brittany, actively tried to interfere with Joey and OP's relationship, ultimately affecting their attendance at a mutual friend's wedding. The bride's choice to prioritize Brittany's comfort over OP's invitation created a frustrating, ongoing battle for acceptance and peace of mind. Despite Brittany's manipulation, OP and Joey found a way to handle the wedding evening with humor and grace. Their experience serves as a reminder of the strength a couple can find in unity, especially when facing external drama. Story 2, The Boss Boundaries Issue. In this story, the OP's girlfriend struggles to balance professional loyalty with personal boundaries, complicated by her close relationship with her boss, Brady. Initially, OP's discomfort is brushed aside, and eventually, he realizes her attachment to Brady goes beyond the professional. OP's girlfriend ultimately leaves him for her boss, revealing that her lingering emotions for Brady had been a consistent distraction throughout the relationship. In the end, OP is left disappointed but clear-headed, handling the breakup with remarkable maturity. Both stories reflect how third-party interference, whether from an ex or a too-close coworker, can strain a relationship. They remind us of the importance of open communication, loyalty, and setting boundaries, even if the process of discovering those boundaries is painful. These experiences leave each OP with lessons in resilience, respect, and the strength to move on. If you've been through a similar situation, or if you'd like to share advice on handling complex relationship dynamics, drop a comment below. And if you're enjoying these stories, hit that like button and subscribe for more.